About a year ago, I posted a video comparing the Scuf Infinity one to the Microsoft Elite controller. Spoiler alert, the Scuf did not win. Since then, the Scuf Infinity one has been discontinued and it was replaced in June 2019 by the Scuf Prestige, which works on the Xbox One, PC and Android devices. Based on my experience with the Scuf before, I just wasn't interested. But then I looked at videos of it. I thought to myself, this looks better than the Infinity one, maybe I should try it out. But it's expensive. I love my Elite and I decided not to bother as nothing would take me away from Microsoft's finest invention. But for some reason, I started looking at it again and I thought I'd give it a try. Here is my review of the Scuf Prestige and I'm going to break it down into the following categories. Number 1, features. Number 2, design and style. Number 3, customization. Number 4, price. Number 5, using the controller. And number 6, my overall impression of the controller. So let's take a look at this bad boy. What is special about the Scuf Prestige? What does it do? Well, the main selling point for controllers like this are the paddles on the back that can be remapped to various controller functions. This allows you to perform the action of your A, B, X, Y buttons without taking your thumbs off the thumbsticks, for example. You can also map the D-pad or thumbstick click actions if you want to. Now, unlike the Infinity one, you get all 4 paddles by default. You can't change it, but that's okay because you can easily remove and refit the paddles yourself. Good work, Scuf. Next, we have hair triggers. Now, what hair triggers do is shorten the pressing distance of the triggers, allowing you to pull them quicker for rapid fire. By switching a little switch near the triggers, you can move between a standard trigger press distance and a shorter pressing distance. This is great for shooters, but don't use it for racing games as you will lose the ability to fully accelerate or brake. Something else the Prestige adds here is a small screw next to each trigger, and by adjusting this screw with the provided Allen key, you can adjust the hair trigger's strength between short and really short. If you make it too short, your gun might just constantly fire on its own, so you need to make sure you find that sweet spot. Also on the Prestige, you can change the thumbsticks. You could do this on the Infinity one also, but the process was different, and I'll come to that in a moment. With the Prestige, I got a single dome stick and a single taller stick as extras along with a Scuf stick on the right and a standard Xbox stick on the left. On the Infinity, the process for swapping the sticks involved using a special key thing that unscrewed a cover on the stick and then you would swap the stick out. It looked ugly in my opinion, and it's also a hassle having an extra debris to keep around for taking the controller apart or making adjustments. To swap the sticks on the Prestige, we get to talk about what I think is actually the best feature of this controller, which is the removable faceplate. The Prestige has a magnetic faceplate that you can remove and swap with other faceplates. This is a great feature allowing you to change the style of your controller if you feel the need and have the money to buy spares. When you remove the faceplate, you can then change the thumbsticks and the D-pad. Changing sticks and D-pads aside, this takes us nicely on to the next topic. As with all Scuf controllers, you can customize the look before they leave the factory and arrive on your doorstep. There don't seem to be as many options available for the Prestige as there was for the Infinity. To be honest, I didn't feel like there was that much choice, but there is a choice and that's the important thing. I went for a green face with white accents and black buttons. It just seemed like a nice choice, but of course it's not going to win any design awards. Look, it's a pretty standard looking controller if I'm honest, I'm fully aware of that, but I am fine with that. The Scuf sticks aren't particularly pretty, but as I talked about earlier, you can swap them out if you want to. What's really special about the design of this controller is the removable faceplate as mentioned previously. With other controllers you have to unscrew the back of the controller and void your warranty, but with the Prestige it's magnetic and it just pops off. This allows you to not only replace the faceplate with another really easily, but it's how you now change the thumbsticks. It allows so much more flexibility in terms of the look and customized thumbsticks. Although not officially supported, you can also change the D-pad. I have swapped the D-pad and sticks on mine with the Elite options just because I really like them. Although I doubt I will switch out the magnetic sticks and magnetic Elite D-pad, I think they make the controller look that bit nicer too. It's also a really light controller and it feels kind of nice. I'm not bothered about controller weight normally, but it is nice to hold a lighter controller every now and then. When it comes to customization, Scuf has made steps forward since the Infinity one. I've already talked about thumbsticks, I've already talked about hair trigger adjustments. What I haven't really talked about yet is the paddles that allow you to perform in-game actions without taking your thumb off the thumbsticks. By default, these come mapped to the A, B, X, Y button functions of your controller. However, you can change these. The Infinity one was rather limited in this area and was one of the reasons I marked it down when I put it up against Microsoft's Elite controller. You're able to map the paddles to A, B, X, Y, thumbstick clicks, and left or right on the D-pad only. With the Prestige though, you can map the 4 paddles to A, B, X, Y, thumbstick clicks, all 4 directions of the D-pad, the bumpers, and even the view and menu buttons. That's pretty much every standard button on the controller. The only ones missing are the triggers, but as these are analog, you probably don't want these on the paddles anyway. Some people will argue that you can play claw instead of spending money on a controller like this. Sure, that is an option to press face buttons without taking your thumbs off of the sticks. But what you don't get by playing claw is a quick and simple way to put longer, shorter or domed sticks on the controller. You don't get hair trigger options. Claw is fine, but it resolves a small portion of what these sorts of controllers give you, and it resolves it in a very specific way. It doesn't resolve it any way that you want it to on a game-by-game basis. As with most pro controllers such as the Scuf, the price is a weak point. I strongly criticise the Infinity one for its price point. What it offered was just not worth the money in my opinion, certainly when you put it against certain other controllers. The Prestige is not any more competitively priced. In fact, my one here is pretty much the same as what I paid for my Infinity one, and I did change everything that I was able to change. My faceplate is one of the cheaper options though. For the Infinity I paid about £147 including shipping. I paid £143 for the Prestige including shipping. I did use a voucher code though that saved me £9, so actually the Prestige is more expensive, but not by much. To be fair though, the Prestige does more than the Infinity one. In fact, with the current wave of competition out there, the Prestige looks like it's going to be one of the more competitively priced pro controllers. You could make the controller slightly more expensive, by around £20 perhaps, by taking out rumble motors, having a more fancy faceplate design and a couple of other minor tweaks. This is an area where the Infinity one really fell down for me, and I was concerned that the Prestige would also fall down for me here. Sadly it did. Using the Prestige, for me at least, is not a great experience, but hear me out. My problem with the Scuf controllers is paddle placement. They just don't feel natural to me. The outside ones are okay, but the inner paddles are just too fiddly to get to. When you do get to them, they're rather stiff or require you to press them with the side of your fingers, which just doesn't feel right for me. Even Scuf's own videos showing people using the paddles don't look quite right. Generally, when I speak to people about Scuf, they feel the same about the inner paddles and say they just don't use them. Even though the outside paddles are easier to use day to day, you still don't press them naturally. They all require you to kind of press into the backing of the controller. However, the way your fingers are placed naturally when holding a controller means that, for me at least, I want to press into the grips. Once you get used to it, you can use the outer paddles without too much issue. The inner paddles though either become useless or only usable every now and then rather than consistently, as they are never right at your fingertips. You cannot realistically press the 2 left paddles at the same time in a controlled manner, for example, which kind of spoils the full control experience. Paddles aside, the controller is fine to use. The hair triggers are nice, but other than the triggers and paddles, when it comes to using the controller day to day, the Prestige is a regular controller, unless you have a funky thumbstick setup. Before I end this section though, I would just like to put the way you remap the paddles under a bit of a microscope. Scuf continues to use an extra little gizmo called the EMR key. To remap, you put the little magnet on the back of the controller, hold a paddle, then press the button you want to map it to for a minimum of 1 second. This is fine, but you can't quick switch between preset configs like you can with other controllers. I can live with this, but the annoyance is with the key itself. When you put the key in the position it tells you to in the instructions, you can't actually press the inner paddles, which is crazy. To be able to press the inner paddles, you need to move the key up a bit, and when you do that, the key just falls off. Scuf really need to work on this. I understand the desire to not create a bit of software like Microsoft and Razer have, as they would then have to maintain multi-platform compatibility, etc., and the EMR key is a simple way to use a single method across all controllers. This key though is just a hindrance. So, what do I think of the Scuf Prestige overall? Well, after a fair bit of use, I have decided that I prefer it to the Scuf Infinity one, even though there aren't loads of practical changes. The paddles are the same, the hair triggers are the same but actually work on this one. They didn't on my Infinity one straight from the box. The thumbsticks are pretty much the same, and you can't change the D-pad, which you could on the Infinity. You do at least get spare sticks with this one though. So why do I prefer it? I really can't put my finger on it, to be honest. I think maybe that the faceplate is just such a great innovation for me, plus I really like the green and it doesn't feel like as much of a toy as the Infinity one did. With that said though, my main use case for Pro controllers is Rainbow Six Siege. I've really struggled to use it comfortably with Siege, as clicking the sticks to lean whilst aiming, moving and firing a gun on target is challenging enough. Pressing a paddle to crouch and adding that into the mix is just not a natural feeling. Trying to press the inner sticks as well is just as impossible an ask really. This is my main problem with the Scuf controllers, the paddles. They just are not natural for me. If it came without the paddles but had all of the other features and was maybe £99, I think this would be a great controller and I would strongly recommend it. Saying that though, I still recommend it as a potential Pro controller. I accept that my beef with the paddles is a personal thing and others have no issue with them, but I do also know that there are others out there that do have beef with them. If you can try one first, spend a week with it, train the muscle memory, I think it's worth a look. If you can find yourself a discount code or get it as a gift if possible, I think this is certainly a worthy choice if you can use the paddles. I certainly wouldn't say forget Scuf controllers based on my experience with the Prestige. So that has been my review of the Scuf Prestige Pro controller for Xbox, PC and Android devices. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you are still here, I can only assume that you have liked it, in which case make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, getting your notifications to make sure you don't miss anything more in the future. At some point I will be comparing the Scuf Prestige to the mighty Microsoft Xbox Elite controller, probably the Series 2 rather than the Series 1 just because it makes good sense to. Thank you very much for watching.